What's going on, guys? This is Stan, and I'm back again to talk about some more Magic the Gathering Old School killer decks. I'm going to be talking about the Prosbloom deck, which is actually one of the most dominating decks ever created. This one comes in at number 9. This deck first reared its head, I remember, when Mirage and Visions hit the scene. That was around like spring of 97, and in some way, shape, or form, you still can see a lot of Prosbloom decks out there. You know, some of them may not be using life drains anymore, but they're still kind of out there. This was probably one of the most popular decks when Visions and Mirage hit the scene. I mean, it was so popular. A lot of players at the Pro Tour in Paris were using Type 2 Prosbloom decks. The Prosbloom deck, it started off, it was like a Mirage and Visions constructed deck, but then later on it kind of like bled over in the Classic, it bled over into Classic Restricted, and then Type 2, like I said earlier. Now, taking a look at the recipe, this is a multicolored combo deck. This is probably like one of the first combo decks I ever encountered. This was one of the few pure combo decks to do really well and actually win huge in the tournament scene back in the day. Talking about the functionality, the Prosbloom deck wins by blowing your opponent away with a huge life drain. The rest of the deck was geared towards generating enough mana while protecting the combo, and it goes a little something like this. First, you need to get the squandered resources in play. A lot of people say that this is the motor that makes the deck run. Then you gotta sacrifice your land and cast a natural balance. Then you go ahead and you get that mana and you dump it into a huge prosperity and ditch cards to the cadaverous bloom so that you can get even more mana. You gotta continue casting prosperities and infernal contracts as necessary. You gotta make sure you got that City of Solitude in play. And once you got enough mana and a life drain, you go ahead and you blow your opponent away. Now, if you manage to pull all of this off, you'll pretty much leave your opponent dumbfounded. Really, I've seen plenty of players with their jaws just on the fucking floor because someone managed to pull this off within like 2 to 3 turns. And for any player that manages to do this, there is no description I can give you for the joy that you experience when you see your opponent's face. Now, shortly after the Paris Pro Tour, Squandered Resources got banned in the Mirage, Visions, and Weatherlight tournaments. And I think the DCI considered banning it in Type 2 as well. I'm not really sure because I stopped playing with the Prosbloom deck because at that time everybody had a Prosbloom deck or some sort of a Prosbloom deck strategy. I didn't want to be another face in the crowd that was, dick riding the damn Prosbloom. So I kind of went away from it. But like I said, in some way, shape, or form, the Prosbloom deck is still around. Combo decks aren't going anywhere, just like Land Destruction's not going to go anywhere. This was the first combo deck that I ever played with. Later on, I managed to get my hands on the Fruity Pebbles deck and various other nasty combo decks that I'll get into a little bit later. Weaknesses of the Prosbloom: uncontrolled deck that's just as nasty, a faster combo deck, or a deck that relies on countering everything that you do. Also, if you haven't noticed from the recipe, you only have 2 life drains. Keep that in mind, and try not to fire off those life drains unless you got a clear shot. Alright, that's all I gotta talk about with the Prosbloom. One of the first combo decks I ever met up with. That's mainly the reason why it is in the top 10 most dominating decks of the old school. Alright, I'm Stan, and that's all for now.